Hey, this is going to be basically a tutorial about how to begin wood carving with a knife or whittling. I suppose the best place to start is with your tools that you're going to use. Now, most knives that people see and use nowadays, at least before I started getting into wood carving, would be ones where the blades are just as long as the handle, if not longer, and the sharp parts on the bottom here on the curve, and the top is not the actual blade, the blade's on the curved part. You also see them in like pocket knives like this. They're what I'd say most knives in the world are like. Now these can be used for wood carving. They do work, though they are not ideal, having such a large blade that you don't necessarily need for it, and it's just not as precise as it could be. So that brings me to whittling knives and what they look like. If you really want to get into whittling and do something, make some pretty cool stuff, I suggest you invest in one of these. As you can see, here's one. This is one of my favorites. The handle is generally fairly large and the blade is much smaller in comparison. And the thing that I was surprised by and didn't realize is on a whittling knife, the blade is on this flat end here, and the curved side is actually dull. And that's so you can get more precise cuts. So you can like really angle into certain spots, and you can like get a tip of a point in and like cut out little sections or something like that. Things you can't really do with those other types of blades. Here's a pocket knife version of a whittling blade that I bought. This one's pretty good. It's from Case Cuttery Knives. Once again, the blade's on the flat part. And then I recently just got this knife. It's actually an all-around wood carving knife. As you can see, the one blade on here is basically the same as these other ones I have. Notice how it's got a fairly long handle and to blade ratio, and it's for, you can get really good precise wood carving with that. This also has other tools in it, like V gouges, chisels, curved knife, and that's the other type of knife I wanted to mention, were curved knives. Here's one where I have just the similar thing with the long handle and the short blade, and here's the one on this knife as well. These are really convenient because these help you make things such as spoons, which would otherwise be nearly impossible to make without this type of knife. So you can take a flat piece of wood like this and you use this curved knife and you can kind of scoop in, and that can help you make the bowl of a spoon as you get deeper and deeper into the wood. So that basically covers the different types of knives that you can use. Next thing I want to go over is safety equipment. Now, though it's not required, I do suggest that you get safety equipment when wood carving. This is a Kevlar glove. They're pretty cheap. They're maybe $10 or something like that. And they prevent yourself from cutting yourself. Now these blades are very sharp. They can cut wood no problem, as you can see. But I can take that and I can press that and saw my finger and it doesn't cut through that Kevlar. The disadvantage to the Kevlar gloves, one, they wear out, as you can see, over time, and two, they're not poke proof. If I were to do this, it would go right through and into my skin, which is not very nice. Now, if you want to get something that is both slice proof and poke proof, then you can invest into a chainmail glove. Now these are a little more expensive. I think I paid about $60 for this or something, and they're slice proof, and they're not entirely poke proof, but they're much better than the Kevlar gloves, although they are less comfortable and harder to grip and don't fit as well. So depending on the project I'm working on decides the type of glove I'm gonna wear. Now we're gonna move on to the type of technique that's best used when whittling. As far as the safety gear goes, like I mentioned with the gloves, generally you wear those with your non-dominant hand that you're not cutting with, because if you're holding the knife correctly, it's pretty hard to cut your hand that you're using. So the thing you want to do is you want to hold the object with your non-dominant hand, have your knife in your dominant hand, and you kind of hold it at an angle like so, where the tip is pointing away from you, and then you can set it down on the wood at sort of an angle, kind of like, oh, about that much. And then you use your thumb, this is your driving thumb, that you use to apply most of the force and push forward. Your right hand, or your dominant hand, is just guiding, but your left hand is doing most of the force when doing this. And then you can just go back and forth, taking little slices like you're peeling a carrot. And this will result in good control and make sure you can have clean and accurate cuts. This is the main cut used when wood carving. Now there are other types of cuts, and I will now explain those. Now the type of cut that I do second most, at least that I found, is called the stop cut. That's where you want something with like a sharp angle that comes with stop and like with a V. So first step is you go in with your knife and you just slice down into, generally a corner is when I find doing it, but could be like a rounded edge or something. And then you come in from an angle and you do a push cut down into that stop cut. And then as you can keep growing this more and more to make that deeper and deeper. It's hard to do it all at once, but as you can get it deeper and deeper, you can start getting that stop cut going. Now the third type of cut that I do is called the paring cut. Now this one I want to have some protection on my dominant knife hand, so I'm going to put on this Kevlar glove right now. Now this one goes against what most people are told, and that's never cut towards yourself. Well, in this case you kind of have to, and it's under control, so it's for the most part safe. Now you start with the knife towards you at an angle coming there. Well, there's a hole in this glove, but I'll try to get by. And then you pull towards you, and then you stop it with your thumb. They sell knife thumb guards for this, or if you have a newer Kevlar glove, it works good. But basically you just pull towards yourself and then you stop at your thumb, and that gets a nice swooping down cut, which is harder to do when you're doing it with a push cut. Seems to be harder to come out. You start getting that split when you start coming out. So you use the paring cut to get it nice and smooth. Now the last type of cut is that I do is called a V cut. So that one, you kind of come in from a flat surface and you use mostly your tip. And this is where it becomes important to have a whittling knife as opposed to some of those more traditional knives I showed at the beginning of the video. And that's because you can get more precision with this type of blade. So you want to come in at an angle and just draw a line down basically, depending on how long you want. And then you come in from the other side, meeting at the base of this V. You're making like a V trench. And then if you got it correctly, you can start forming a V trench. Just going back and forth, making it deeper and deeper each time you go through. Like that. Now those are the 4 different types of cuts that I use. Then of course there is the 5th type when you have a curved knife, if you're lucky enough to get one of these. Well, not lucky enough if you're just willing to go buy one. Those basically are used one of 2 ways. Either with a push cut, kind of the same technique. You guide it with your dominant hand, you push it with your thumb of your non-dominant hand, and you scoop. Now, sometimes you might get a one where the blade's on the opposite side, and I do have those. Those ones, you pull towards you and you do a paring cut with those. Now this knife, if you're a right-handed dominant person, it's a push cut curved knife. If you're a left-handed person, this is a paring curved knife. And obviously they sell some for the other direction. So buy whichever one you would prefer, or both, so then you don't have to choose. Now, despite whichever type of cut you're doing, the important thing to keep in mind is the direction of the grain. Now my camera might not be high enough resolution for you to see, but the idea with the grain is you always want to be cutting across the grain and not digging into it. So here, as you can see, if I were to try going here, I'm actually cutting into the grain, and then it starts, see that splintering? That's not good. You don't want that, because then when you do get them off, you got these really rough bits, and that just doesn't look good. Now, if I come at it from the other side, I'm cutting across, and as you can see, it's taking nice clean shaves now. Now this piece of wood was kind of crooked, which is why it makes a decent example of this. Generally, if you got a block of wood, the grain are running up and down with it. And if that's the case, for like if you're getting a corner, you're almost good, always good to just go up in that corner. And that's going to make nice, smooth cuts. And if I want to continue making this bigger, I start from here, going across the grain. Now if I were to come in from it from this side, I'd be going into the grain. And then you can see I can't come out. I'm trying to come out, and it starts splintering. You don't want to get that. When you come from this side, you don't get that issue. It's nice, smooth cuts. That's a key to do. It just takes practice mostly. Over time, you'll be able to better recognize which direction the grain is. And if you ever feel like if you're coming in and you start feeling like it's cutting into the grain, quickly switch directions and then you'll be able to get that out and you'll be able to smoothen this out. There, see, it's much smoother than when you go into the grain. So it's something that really just takes practice. The more you do it, the better you'll be able to recognize it. Yeah, so practice with it. If you ever start splintering the wood or something bad, switch directions and it'll probably work a lot better. And most of the time, you'll be able to just get it with feel. Shortly as you start cutting in, you'll be able to know right away, is this the right direction or not? But that takes a lot of practice. So that's all I have for the basics of whittling. From there, you can move on to make all sorts of different projects, whatever you think you'd like to work on. Whittling is a great hobby to have, especially if you're outdoors, like camping or something, because then you don't have to worry about cleanup of all these shavings. It's a hobby that you can do a lot of places. Unfortunately, not everywhere. Like you can't do this where knives aren't allowed, like on a plane ride or something like that. But for the most part, it's fairly versatile and it's a fun hobby to get into. Now I will show you some things that you can potentially make in the future once you start working on these skills and get creative with the different types of things you think you can want to work on. Alright, here are some examples of things that you can start making once you practice this. Some of the things that are easiest to start with are, say, like a butter spreader like this. Fairly simple. You can start with a flat piece of wood, you thin it down, and then it's just a matter of carving the outline on it and then tapering it down so it's smooth. And then when you're done, of course, use some sandpaper on it to make it smooth. And then it's good to coat it in something like flaxseed oil. Either that or beeswax is good. Just search online for good wood polish and that's a good finisher for them. Once you get that down pretty well, then you can move on to making things like spoons. Spoons are good, but will require you to have one of these curved knives, so you're able to scoop out the bowl on them. It could be done with a flat knife, but it'll be much harder. And if you plan to make spoons, it's going to be worth your time to invest in a curved knife. From there, you can move on, start making little figurines. So like here's a little toy horse for a child. Pretty simple. Just working on those different types of cuts I had shown. Nothing too complicated. Once you get done with that, you can start working on things that move within each other. So here's a little rough one I worked on. I haven't finished it up with sandpaper or anything yet, but you start with a block of wood and then you cut out the insides, carving out the insides, and you got to carve out this ball in the middle. I do suggest to just simply try to carve balls first on the outside. Try to get them so they can roll around the table. Practice with that before you try to do this, and then you can have a little ball in a cage toy. Something similar to that, you could create like a heart with Cupid's arrow through the middle. It can move around, but it doesn't come out. And of course, as you can see, you can paint stuff when you're done, which is kind of nice. And then some of the more challenging things that I've worked on are these figurines of people. They take a little more time and commitment to work on, especially if you want to paint them afterwards. But they're really fun to work on if you have the time. Great way to pass some time and have fun and be creative. Now, generally, the type of wood that I use is basswood or balsa wood. This wood is very soft and easy to carve. It's very lightweight. If you get something harder like oak or something, you're going to have a very hard time carving it, though you will be able to do more fine and detailed work. Basswood is more likely to splinter or break off, but it's a lot easier to carve, especially for beginners. So I do suggest to start with that. I have all these figures and spoons that you see here are made with basswood, except for this one. This is box elder wood, so it has some of that nice red grain in it, which I think looks pretty cool. But I think that's about it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks for watching.